Hey, fifth grade. We're going to finish up with Daniel. I believe this is going to be the last chapter we do. We're going to do Daniel chapter 6, and this is kind of the most iconic chapter of all of Daniel because it's the one story that most people know when we talk about Daniel, other than Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But this is the actual chapter of Daniel in the den of lions. So remember last time we had King Belshazzar, and he was the son of Nebuchadnezzar. And he was doing his own thing. He was disobeying God. He thought that everything that was in his realm was because of him, and God sent that hand to write on the wall. Most of you guys agreed that you would have been terrified seeing that. I would agree with you too. I think it would have freaked me out. And it basically, what was written on the wall, that's where we get that saying, the writing on the wall, came true. And he was killed that night. And then a king by the name of Darius took over, King Darius. So here we go, verse 1. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps. Now those were like governors of every town that was a part of Syria. And he did that to rule throughout his kingdom with 3 administrators over all those 120 governors. One of them was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to those 3 so that the king wouldn't have to suffer any loss and the king wouldn't have to worry about anything. Those people kind of took charge of like collecting taxes. They were in charge of keeping security for their specific region. So this made the job of the king a lot easier. And it was Daniel and 2 other guys that were in charge of those 120 people, okay? So Daniel was so distinguished among the administrators and all those governors because of his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So pause for a second. Daniel is about to be placed head over the kingdoms. What do you think was taking place in the minds of all the other people there? That's right, jealousy was probably starting to stew, okay? At this, the administrators, the other 2 administrators, and all those governors tried to find reason to bring charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in Daniel because he was trustworthy. He was neither corrupt, so he wasn't like the sneaky little person making like sneaky deals, nor was he negligent. He always did his job. He always did what was asked of him. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the laws of his God." So now they're trying to weasel their way around the system to find a way to get Daniel in trouble. So these 2 administrators and all of those governors went as one group to the king. Talk about a mob mentality. They all, imagine that, 122 people show up in the king's courts, and this is what they say. "May King Darius live forever." The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, those are the governors, advisors, they have all agreed that the king should issue an edict, that means issue like a law, and enforce the law that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, of course, the king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue this decree, issue this law, and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians. Those were the all the people groups there, which cannot be revoked or repealed. So King Darius thought about it and he said, okay, and he put that decree into writing, not understanding that they were trying to come up with a plan to get Daniel sacked, okay? Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. And 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and he prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Just because human law changed what his religious law had him do every day, it didn't change what he would do. He still went home, he still prayed to God, and he still put his trust in there. And he didn't do it like out in public. He wasn't like a Pharisee that was like, "Oh God, thank you for everything you do." He did it in the privacy of his own home, okay? So here's what happened. The men went as a group and they found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they saw him And they ran back to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. And they did it in a sneaky way. They said, did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being, except you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den? And the king answered, well, the decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. So they basically like had the king say, well, yeah, I did that, and no one can go against that. So then they said to the king, well, Daniel, who is one of those exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, and he doesn't pay attention to the laws that you put into writing. He still prays 3 times a day. And when the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel, and he made every effort until sundown to save him. So the king didn't want Daniel to be found guilty of this. So he spent the rest of that day trying to figure out a way to go around what he had already put into law. Okay? Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, don't you remember, your majesty, that according to the law, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed? They're basically saying, like, you can't go against your word because you put it into writing. If you all of a sudden go against your word and your laws, then everything can be questioned that had been put into laws previously. So reluctantly, the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and they threw him into the lion's den. And the king said to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. And they brought this big stone and they placed it over the top of the den. And the king sealed it with his own ring, like the wax, and he swished his ring into it, so that with the ring of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. So no one could come running over and be like, there was a mistake. No, this is what it was. And the king returned back to his palace, and he spent the night without eating, without any entertainment, because he could not sleep. He was so guilty. Have you ever been racked by guilt, like so guilty about something that it caused you to have a hard time sleeping? This is what he was feeling. All night long, he's like, I just killed someone that I really, really trusted and has proven himself to me over and over and over again. Verse 19, at the first light of dawn, as soon as the light of dawn started, the king got up and he hurried to the lion's den. And when he came near the den, he called to Daniel in this anguished voice. He said, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? And then he waited to hear an answer. And Daniel answered, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. And the king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in God. And at the king's command, here's where the tables turn. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel, that was how many people? That's right, that was 122 people. If it goes based on all those people who came before the king to trap Daniel, all of them, along with their wives and their children, they were all thrown into the lion's den. And here's how it's depicted. Before those bodies even reached the floor of the den, the lions had overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Wow. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and people of every language in all of the earth, everyone who's alive. And he said, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and revere the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius in the kingdom of Persia. And that's the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Can you see how when you stick to what you believe, that even when there's people coming at you who are trying to make it so that you can't worship God, that God is still right there with you? For today, I just want you to comment in the comment section, saying something new you learned from this story of Daniel and the lion's den, something you had never heard before about the story. I know this is a pretty common story. Some of you, this may be the first time that you heard this story, but I want you to put a comment about something new that you learned. Tomorrow, instead of doing SOAP, you're going to follow along with me with a study guide. I'm going to have a paper that you can print out, or you can just write along with me for a study guide about these first 6 chapters of Daniel. And then on Tuesday, we're going to have a test over that. I hope you've enjoyed going through this part of Daniel and learning about the interpretations of the dreams, and Nebuchadnezzar and Darius and Belshazzar and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Again, I miss you guys and I love you guys.